Good evening, I'm Pinky Webb. Tonight we ask the questions, we tackle the issues, we clarify matters, and we get on point. The families and lawyers of drug war victims are opposing the request of the interim release of former President Rodrigo Duterte from his detention in the Netherlands. Duterte's counsel, Nicholas Kaufman, told the International Court pretrial chamber last week a third country is ready to host a former president who is facing charges of crime against humanity. Kaufman says his client is not a flight risk and the request is based on humanitarian reasons. Let's get on point with International Criminal Court Assistant to Counsel, Attorney Kristina Conti. Attorney Conti, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for your time, and it's good to see you.
Thank you, and happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Let me start with this, because there's still a question on how the prosecution has actually responded to this interim release. So the defense is asking for this, what they call an urgent interim release for former President Rodrigo Duterte to an undisclosed country that has actually agreed to receive him. For the record, has the prosecution agreed not to oppose this urgent interim release provided certain conditions are met?
We cannot confirm for the prosecution. They promised to send in their observations to this motion or to this request within the week or soon as possible. As far last I checked, wala pa silang confirmation. And there's two entities that you need confirmations from, both the prosecution and the requesting party, the state, the receiving state. So the state has also not confirmed that they have agreed. So there's two entities that the defense has committed some form of, has put on record on, and now they're put in the spot. Kasi, do you confirm or do you not confirm?
But I was reading the pre-trial chamber report on this, no, the ICC. And number one says that Mr. Duterte respectfully requests, in accordance with Rome Statute, the interim release to redacted. The government, obviously redacted, has expressed to the defense its advance and principled agreement to receive Mr. Duterte. So, the defense is already saying, meron na pong pumayag tanggapin si dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte sa kanilang bansa. So, that is confirmed.
Not yet as well. It's only the defense saying that a state has already told them, and the prosecution has confirmed that they will not oppose. It still has to be, well, I don't think they would take this risk na parang gamble or a bluff.
Oh, sigurado namang totoo ito, di ba?
I would say so, but we need to see and outside of the prosecution agreed, and then there's another party that has agreed, we have to look at the conditions. And the conditions are redacted at present.
Exactly. Because, let me read, Attorney, sorry, no, para lang po malinaw, I'll bring in section or number 3 of this. The prosecution has confirmed. Ito po kasi nakasulat eh. The prosecution has confirmed its non-opposition to the interim release to redacted state party on the understanding that the terms and conditions set out in Annex A to this filing would be met. So, ang ibig po sabihin nito, ito pong binabasa ko ay, ang sinasabi po ng defense ay may pumayag na bansa, number 1, at hindi nag-oppose ang prosecution. So, is it safe to say na talagang hindi na nag-oppose yung prosecution, provided that certain terms and conditions are met?
Yes, but then Annex A pertains to terms and conditions, I think, of the prosecution and the state. But Annex B is the offer of Duterte. So there's two sets of conditions which we don't know, and we would have to check if they are conflicting.
Will we ever know?
If they are consistent. At this point, no. But we might. It really depends on the pretrial chamber if they would unseal or make public the conditions.
I see.
So it's something that, in a sense, we don't have any control over. Kasi hindi naman tayo yung magsasabi ng ganito dapat, ganito. When the requirement or the duty to produce the Mr. Duterte in court depends on the receiving state. Walang pakialam dyan or walang kinalaman dyan ang Pilipinas or even yung mga victims. And at the same time, the prosecution has to, kumbaga, they're in charge of the witnesses. And so, largely, it's up to them. The victims, on a larger scale, our concern is as to how does it make us feel? How do potential witnesses, how are they impacted by the kumbaga, roaming around of Mr. Duterte? So that's where our views and concerns come in.
I see. But I think to the minds of some, the question on did the prosecution not oppose this comes to mind. Because why would the prosecution not oppose this? Siguro yun po yung tanong. That's why I wanted to clarify this particular statement that the prosecution has confirmed its non-opposition to the interim release to the redacted state party. So, under certain terms and conditions.
Yes.
Ang problema po dito sa under terms and conditions provided in section or Annex A, ang nakasulat po with confidential annexes
Yeah.
A, B, and C, ex parte defense and prosecution only. So we don't know.
Yeah, so we don't know if the conditions by the defense, by the prosecutor, and then by the receiving state are consistent. So,
Pero silang tatlo po ang magbibigay ng conditions.
in a sense, yes. But ultimately, it will be the court which will set out the conditions if they grant the interim release. Yung court lahat ang magpapasya kung alin yung tatanggapin, sinong mananaig, ano pa, and they can add conditions. On the part of the victims, our study has only been as far as the conditions that the court has previously set out. So we have kumbaga, a feeling of what the court is ready to put in as conditions.
Such
But-
as?
Such as, number one, no media contact. Duterte has already put that out in his pleading. Sabi niya, hindi ako kukontak ng media, isusurrender yung passport. That's one. Para hindi ka makaikot ng bansa. There have been instances na yung, kasi the interim release or the order, it will be a case-to-case basis. Hindi siya yung tipong gaya dun sa dati. It depends really on what his needs are. So, for example, meron siyang medical needs. Then, yung location niya would be sa bahay or dun sa facility and then ospital. Pwedeng kung hindi medical, edi sa bahay and then an office and so forth. So, it really depends on the pretrial chamber what conditions they will set. But there's also this condition that could be possible for Duterte that he continues to report periodically to the pretrial chamber. Magpapakita siya habang nakalaya. So it could be monthly, it could be weekly, just to show and prove that he's not a flight risk.
So there's really no one condition or uniform conditions that are going to be copy-pasted, parang ganon. Hindi siya ganon.
Actually, we have to look at what the basis for his release are. As of now, the basis of his release is he's 80 years old. I think one of the numbers there, one of the paragraphs, talks about we have to release Mr. Duterte because he's 80 years old. And then, dito na tayo blind, comma, blank, and comma, blank. So, we think it could pertain to medical conditions. So, we have to ascertain first what these are.
In the past, if you know, are medical conditions actually divulged?
Yes. In some instances, the accused himself was willing enough to present what are his medical conditions. At one point, I think there were also requests for parang ang tawag natin medical furlough or medical leave, yung lalabas tapos magpapagamot. There have been requests like that. And the interim release, quote-unquote, was only for that specific purpose. Lumabas lang temporarily. Kasi anything falls within the term interim release. So it could be a temporary release. Itong interim release in Duterte, it seems to be semi-permanent.
Yeah, it seems like that.
Yeah.
And with all the conditions, rather, the statements made that a country is willing to host him.
Yes,
Parang dun siya titira habang
Which makes
nililitis
it
siya.
dangerous.
Why does it make it dangerous?
Well, for the victims, we see that with his power, with his money, with his influence, he could very well tamper with the evidence, with the victims. And ito medyo labas na kumbaga dun sa legal scope. Pero yung feeling na, ay bakit nakalaya at bakit may special treatment yung ganitong klaseng akusado. We're still, of course, on track to have the confirmation of charges hearing in September. At dun pa lang, pagkatapos pa lang nun, magsisimula yung trial. Pero iba na yung pakiramdam ngayon ng mga biktima na, kahit paano, we finally put a precedent behind bars.
But in this document, it also states applicable laws, such as Article 60, enclosed in parenthesis 2 of the Rome Statute. A person subject to a warrant of arrest may apply for interim release. I bring that up because not only is it part of this document that, anyone can actually look in the internet and understand this urgent interim release. But even the time that the former president was brought to The Hague, one of the options already being talked about was this interim release. Hindi ho siya bago. It didn't come out of thin air. And as mentioned, it is an applicable law that they are using for the former president to avail of.
Well, I would even go to the extent of saying that the interim release is a right of the accused before the ICC. But it's only now that they availed of it. Yun. I think it could be a tactic. It could be a tactic. The first pleading that they filed was a question on jurisdiction. It came about 2 months after na, kumbaga, nung simula talaga, ang dami na nating sinasabi, ayaw nila ng jurisdiction, wala daw kapangyarihan yung ICC. But officially and on paper, they only filed this in May. First, they questioned jurisdiction. A week after, they questioned the impartiality of 2 of the judges. So parang, after it was settled and it became clear that the 3 judges, kumbaga the same 3 judges will remain, they've put out now the interim release. So it could be a tactic in the sense na right now, the ICC or the pretrial chamber is being confronted with 2 issues, which essentially, one talks about permanent release. Because in the question to the jurisdiction, it asks for dismissal of the case. Palayain nyo na ako. The other one, this interim release, is for temporary release. So essentially, right now, Duterte has presented 2 issues. Kumbaga, inuna niya yung mas malaki, tapos yung medyo mas maliit. Kung alin man ang mauna, laya siya.
Ibig sabihin, sa pagkaalam natin dito, either ibasura yung kaso or bigyan siya ng bail. Parang gano'n yun.
Ang ano niyan, palalayain niyo ba ako temporary o baka naman wala nang kapangyarihan talaga yung korte na to. Kaya palayain niyo na ako ng permanente. Kung alin man ang pag-usapan ng korte at i-grant ng korte, laya siya. Kahit temporary or permanently.
We're going to take a very short break. We'll be back with International Criminal Court Assistant Counsel Attorney Kristina Conti. Stay tuned. This is On Point. You're watching On Point, still with us, International Criminal Court Assistant to Counsel Attorney Christina Quanti. So, way back in March, I think it was March 11 that the former president was arrested. March 12, he was brought to The Hague. And then I think it was 13 that he was actually formally detained. So since then, April, May, June, it's been about 3 months. As mentioned a while ago, the option of interim release has always been talked about. Now everyone's asking, which country, if you were to guess which country would receive him, I think there are 3 supposedly now who may receive the former president. Which countries are you looking at?
Well, educated guess? Well, una, we wouldn't like to speculate. It's more of the conditions. Kasi kung saan man siya mapunta, yung conditions yung importante. But as an educated guess, there's Belgium, which has received prior detainees from the ICC. But, of course, these detainees, iba yung character ng krimen nila. Mas mabababang klaseng krimen ang sa kanila. And later, when someone of the same type of crimes that Duterte is charged of, nag-deny yung Belgium. So, plus-minus din
So
yun.
somebody that was seeking
On war crimes.
on ay
Accused
dininay.
on war.
Yeah,
Dininay.
okay.
Sabi ng Belgium, uy, hindi kami ganon. Siguro hindi nila inareglo din ng maayos. But anyway, this country, whichever country this may be, ang pinaka-importante ay how good of a relation it has with the ICC, kumbaga, paano siya sumusunod. We've had, of course, there's many na, imbes na yung countries that doon kami sa should not be, of course, out na yung mga non-member states because they will be uncooperative. There have been several member states na naging uncooperative when issued a warrant of arrest, hindi in-enforce. So, meron kami mga ex dyan. Pero meron ding mga posible. We think probably in Europe. But, again, it's all about the conditions.
But they have to be countries who are a party to the Rome Statute.
Well, they have to be, but eto na, pinag-uusapan din namin, it could also be a non-member state which agrees na to submit to the conditions of the ICC. Kasi it could be done, kumbaga, as long as it's approved by the Assembly of States Parties. Pero I mean, there's 125 countries to choose from. So, more likely than not, it will be a member state that will agree.
And in terms of proximity, does it have to be very close to the Netherlands?
Well, it depends. Kasi kung kunyari, malapit nga pero wala namang airport, kailangan mong i-bus or kailangan mong i-land travel, then that might be complicated. Or there are only few routes to this country or to this location. Compared to a farther country, pero mas mabilis naman. Sabihin 1 hour lang pala yung travel. It also depends on their capacity to, kumbaga, secure the area where Mr. Duterte will probably be put in. If it's, for example, a house, sinong magbabantay dyan? O hindi naman pwedeng sariling bantay niya, tapos, mag-report ka na lang sa amin kung aalis ka. So it really has to be someone able and willing.
In a situation like this where the defense is asking for his interim release, what is the role of the lawyer of the victims? Do they have a voice here?
We should have a voice. We're waiting for the instructions from the pretrial chamber. We thought lalabas nung Friday as to the deadline because this is an urgent request. So baka ang sasabihin, 1 week to comment, the comments will most likely come from the prosecution and, of course, the state. Essentially, it should be the Assembly of State Parties. So ito yung lahat ng mga members ng ICC na. Pero ngayon, dahil may identify na, yung state na yon will confirm or will be asked to comment. We hope and, we trust that the victims will be sought for comment.
But you're not sure?
Yes, because in some instances, hindi tinatanong Pero of course, it depends on the trend, kumbaga dito sa ICC. If they really think that the victim's voice is very important, they will. And they have asked victims to comment on requests for interim release.
Attorney Conti, how big is the participation? I know we talked about this again, but I wanted to bring back the situation in court, no? Ang nangyayari ho kasi sa pagkaintindi ko dito, may prosecution, meron pong defense, at meron pong lawyer of the victims.
Yes.
At hindi po, kahit si prosecution at si lawyer of victims, hindi daw sila nagko-coordinate at hindi sila magkakampi. So there are like 3 independent entities here. Are they of the same, siguro yung importance, pare-pareho ba, degree of importance? Because if so, I guess that makes me conclude that they should be asked about the interim release.
Well, the thing is, they have different kumbaga, objectives. Hindi ito 2 versus 1 kasi. I'd like to disabuse people of the thought na the victim's counsel or the victim's legal team is the prosecutor 2.0. Parang magpo-prosecute siya ng crime. No. We have to present the views and concerns of the victims at all stages of the proceeding. We're not there to prove the crime or to prove that Duterte is guilty, but to air the views and concerns of victims. Medyo kakaiba ito sa atin kasi parang, kukuda lang naman kayo or magsasalita lang naman kayo, may lawyer, may legal team pa kayo. But in the ICC, they've realized it's very important because the prosecution will only talk to a few or select set of victims, there will only be a few victim witnesses. But how about the rest? And that is why the ICC says that when you present the victims to us, you're not required, I mean, for the legal representatives, you're not even required to come up with one voice. You have to give us the full range of feelings, of views and concerns of the victims. And that will help the judges make the decision as humanely as possible.
But who represents the victims in the court, in court? It's not you, right?
It's the legal representative of
Right.
victims. And it could be, well, right now, not me officially yet, because the victims are being vetted
Yeah.
and are applying to the court for personality now. After the victims are recognized. Kasi ang recognized mo, sino yung akusado, tapos yung biktima, nag-a-apply pa lang. Kami ang mga biktima, pagka-register sa kanila, the last date in this process is August 27th. So that's the time that the victims, Victims Participation in Reparation Section will submit victims' application to the court. Parang, ito na, lahat ng nag-apply. Kapag na-recognize na yung nag-apply, they will choose a legal representative for victims.
Who will choose?
Technically, the victims, kasi they have put in, parang magno-nominate sila. At the end of the application form, there's a space. Do you wish for a lawyer? Or do you have a lawyer now? Well, yes, you have, ito po ang pangalan, o kaya ito yung gusto namin na character ng lawyers
And
namin.
that will have to be you.
There's, well, a whole gamut of lawyers available. The entire list of counsels, you can choose from, dapat pala una, in the list of counsels or ilalagay sa list of counsels if the victims prefer this person. And there's a few of us who have already come forward as victims lawyers. We're also discussing among ourselves how we could coordinate, especially if, kasi ang mangyayari, may mga names in the mga nominated. The VPRS, there's this registry, will talk to us all together and say, oh, willing ba kayo na, or kaya nyo bang makapag-usap and to decide on one or two or three or whatever representatives? If not, the court will appoint.
I see.
But it will come later pa in the proceedings.
If the interim release is granted, what is the effect of that? Well, I guess two things. Number one, to the victims who you had made mention in passing a while ago. And to the case, ibig ba sabihin nun na kapag bigyan ng interim release ay nagiging, it weakens the case?
Well, I'll first talk about that. The second question. Yung paglaban ni Duterte, may impact per se? Wala, in the sense that if the case, well, essentially the case will continue, whether he's in detention or outside or elsewhere. But then the problem is, his interim release could pose or hinder eventual prosecution. Kasi sa interim release, depende sa kung saan siya pupunta, depende sa conditions, his interim release could lead to his escape. And for us, with all the context that we know, Duterte has no defense left except for jurisdiction. What's his defense as to, did I order that or not? He's admitted to it. In-order niya. Wala na siyang ibang depensa. Kaya escape is, kumbaga, very palatable to him if he loses the jurisdiction issue. Second, as for the victims, iba yung nasa labas ka at with the capacity to convene your old cabal, to convene the people around you who could not have visited you in jail. For example, Senator Amy Marcos cannot visit him in jail. Senator Robin Padilla, if he leaves jail, there is a possibility that they may be allowed to talk to him. DDS leader supporters, Senator Bato de la Rosa, could very well visit him outside of jail. So that's going to be problematic. And for the victims, ang laki ng impact niya dun sa potential future crimes and pag-tamper with the evidence and the victims.
But just very quickly, does this have to be decided on prior to the September 23 confirmation of charges?
There's no rule that it has to be decided now, even with the jurisdiction. We could even decide on the jurisdiction on September 23rd. But as I see it, the defense wants interim release to be decided first, jurisdiction next, para hindi na matuloy yung September.
International Criminal Court Assistant to Counsel Atty. Kristina Conti. Ma'am, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
That's On Point. Join us again tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel. I'm Pinky Webb. Thank you for watching.